All right, I am building perfect circles for the eyeballs, and then I'm deciding with the move tool where they go. And every once in a while I'll check my reference, but I don't need to match it because I am creating my own version of this emoji, right? So I'll do a little side eye. Everything lines up with the purple. Now I got to do the nose. Very simple. For this, I'm actually just going to Command J, duplicate that circle, and then just move it down. All right, center it. And then Command T. And now this is a nice trick. Instead of just stretching it from one end, if I hold down Option while I stretch it, Option and Shift, it will stretch from the center. So since I have it centered, that gives me a better placement. But that would be where the monkey's nose is. My fox's nose is going to be like down here. So again, I am not really focusing as much on the reference now. And maybe I want the nose to be a little bit more complicated. So I can Command T. I can zoom in on it with Command plus. I can right click and warp it. And maybe I just make this a slightly more complex shape. Not too much, just a little bit. And then kind of move it where I want it. And then I might edit some of the other shapes, like the snout here. Command T, right click, inside, get to the warp tool, and then I'm just going to drag this down, make it a little bit pointier. I'm going to push these ones in a little, and these ones out a little. So it becomes a little bit more V-shaped. Of course, that's going to mess with my hairline, but I can fix that. So it's not always about adding tons of shapes. It's about doing the most with the ones you use and really knowing how to control them. Now for that background. Command T. It's no longer a simple oval. Drag it down a little bit. Push it in a little. In Adobe Illustrator, you can get very fancy with strokes, and you can actually make the strokes varied lengths and widths. But here, we can get that same effect of kind of a varied weight outline just by layering one shape, one complex shape on top of another complex shape. Okay. What else can I use? The whiskers. Now, how can I make those whiskers a whole lot faster? By stealing one of my eyebrows, right? One of my eyebrow groups, duplicating it, and changing its color. Now, unfortunately, I can't do that all in one, so I need to go to each one and change the color, and it's going to be like a light yellow, light kind of golden yellow, like that. And if I want to get it exactly right, what I can do is turn on my background. I can see that light yellow. I guessed pretty close, but that's a little green. So now I go to this one, and instead of trying to find it here, I just click here to match. Okay, and then I'm going to do it with the two circles. Just change the color. You have to say okay each time. It's a little annoying. Okay, now I'm going to take that folder. I'm going to call this, instead of eyebrow, I'm going to call it whisker, because I'm starting to get quite a few layers. And I'm going to Command T that whole folder, turn it more horizontal, hit return, Command T the whole folder, and stretch it by holding Shift out to elongate it like so. Right? And that's going to mess with my circles a little bit. So let's hit return. Then I'm actually going to delete the two circles and replace them with new circles. But first let me trim this a little bit with Command T, right click inside, warp. Just going to even this out a little for the whiskers. And I want it straight on one side, but curved on the other. So I'm going to make a new ellipse, hold down Shift after I've started it, use the Move tool, whoops, be just on the ellipse, come on. Oh, I have to uncheck Auto Select Group, so I can move it independently. And then I need to get that circle to be the right size to round this rectangle. So Command T. I'm not even going to warp it, I'm just going to scale it. And move it. Then I'm going to take the rectangle and I got to transform that just to tug that one corner a little bit further. Like that. And lining things up really matters in vectors because they're infinitely scalable, right? So now I've got that one whisker. Now I can take that whole whisker and I can just shrink it a little bit and then place it where I think it would work for the fox, which might be like this at the top. Turn off this background. But I'm going to be really picky and I'm going to change the angle of that end by warping it and just push that in. So it's more like that. Okay, so now this whisker, I'm going to duplicate, Command J. I'm going to Command T, flip it horizontally. And I'm going to move it to the other side. All right, and then I'm going to duplicate it. Oh, hit return. Duplicate that whisker. Move it down and transform and rotate it. And this time, I'm going to play with the edge again. Command T and warp. And just take that corner in. Okay, now I'm going to duplicate that one. Command T, flip it horizontal, and move it to the other side. So lots of kind of copy pasting. But we do it with Command J and duplicate so that it always is exactly lined up with what we did before. Now I might take all of those whiskers, because it is a fox, and their whiskers aren't quite as high. And I'll take all those layers, and instead of putting them all into a new folder, I'm just going to select all of those whisker ones by holding down Shift. And then I can just use the Move tool, and I can move them all down until they look right for the fox. I could even transform them all together if I wanted to. Okay, next I wanted the little smile with the tongue, because the fox is always tricking some other animal in Aesop's fables in order to eat them. So how can I do this? I think that the best way is probably, this is going to be a kind of a different type of technique. I could do the rounded rectangle again and really warp it, but instead I'm going to do an ellipse on the top here that makes the circle of the mouth that I want. So I think maybe about that size. I'm going to center it. So you can think of that as an open mouth if you like. And now I'm going to warp it, Command T, and bring the top edge down like that to make a bean shape or a rounded rectangle shape that's more rounded all the way. And now I'm going to transform and free transform it again with Command T, and this time I'm just going to hold down Option and shrink it. Right. And then maybe scale it by holding down Shift and just pinching it. So that looks pretty good. Now the tongue. What does the tongue look like? It's just a square with a circle. So I'm going to make the square. Just like you can make a perfect circle, you can make a perfect square by holding down Shift as you're creating it. But don't hold down Shift first, or we'll add it to first start drawing it and then hold down Shift to turn it into a perfect square. And now I want to match the color, so I'm going to turn on the background. I'm going to double click on the layer property, window, change the color to that really bright pink, use the Move tool, move it in, and then tilt it, Command T, rotate it. I'm going to make my tongue a little bit more subtle, maybe shrink it a little bit. Maybe even shorten it by holding down Shift. A little bit more angle. Okay. Now, I need this circle. So you know how this works. Just like rounding a rectangle. I start a circle, then I hold down Shift to make it a perfect circle. Then I use the Move tool and transform to kind of fit it to line up with my tongue. So it's almost there. I just need to widen it just the tiniest bit. All right, and I could group those two together, put them into a folder, call that group tongue, in case I want to play with it on its own. And then if I turn off the background, I can see all the shapes I've created. So I just don't like how there's that strong edge there on that square. So I go to my tongue, I open it up, I go to the square, the rectangle, and I'm going to, just to be safe, I'm going to duplicate it. Command J, turn off that one, because I'm going to be warping it. I don't want to mess up all the edges. But I'm going to try to just curve the top edge here to match the mouth a little bit better. Because I don't like when it comes out from the bottom of the mouth. I want it to come from the middle a little bit. Just a little. See how that looks. It's not quite there. Command T again, warp, just drop this corner.